For You in Houston, Texas, and today we're going to be making a big batch of succulent dirt. I posted about making this video on my YouTube community page and on other social media pages, asking if y'all have any other questions that I haven't answered before, anything in particular, and we'll get around to those during the video too. Right now the main thing is we want to start making this batch of soil, and then we'll learn how to adapt it for your cacti, your tropical succulents, and all that fun stuff. So let's get started.
So here are the ingredients for the recipe. I have just normal topsoil. It's not potting soil, it's just topsoil, which means it is soil that has been taken from the top of the earth. And of course the ingredients in that vary depending on where it's sourced from, but it's just very basic, no extra fertilizer added. This is Turpis. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, get you a close look. This is the stuff they use on baseball fields to absorb the water, keep it dry. And I have some expanded shale. And the good thing about this is I was able to find all of this locally, and I didn't have to have any of it shipped. And it took me some time to figure out a recipe that I can make from local stuff. So I want to make sure you guys know that is an option, but you might have to do a little investigating to be able to find this stuff locally.
So I already have some topsoil in here, and the good thing about topsoil is it's really cheap. Again, it doesn't have any added fertilizer, so you have more control over when your succulents are getting fed, basically. You don't want to feed them when it's overcast. You don't want to feed them when during their winter dormancy, and if they're in a potting soil that already has all that included, you kind of don't have any control over that. So we start with the topsoil. I'm just breaking up. There are going to be some chunks, maybe a little bit of bark in there. You can pull them out, or you can just kind of leave it, and then as your material dries out over time and as you're going in to use it, you can break it up a little bit more. But it's really not bad. This is actually pretty good stuff. And this is, my friend brought this over for me. It's maybe $4 a bag. The stuff I get is even cheaper. Really any brand, but you do want to smell it and make sure it actually smells like, dirt, and sometimes it can get funky, and you'll know what I mean if you ever come across a bag of stinky topsoil. Just smell it at the store before you bring it home. That is a very important tip. So we've got a topsoil. We've got our soil in here, okay, and we're going to start adding our drainage materials. But we'll start with the Turpis first. And what Turpis is, it's made out of, it's fired clay basically, and again, it's cheap. If you can find it locally, you're gonna just be so happy, because I get like 40 pounds for about $14 from a local shop called Southwest Fertilizer, and you can find it at irrigation shops, athletic shops, places that do landscaping sometimes. Again, you might have to call around. They do have a store locator on their website, I believe. You can find a distributor near you. But one thing you need to know is that this stuff comes in different sizes. Some of it's really small, and if you please check the video description, I don't want you to wind up with the wrong stuff. I'm going to make sure make it clear on what size you need to get. It's called the MVP, they do come larger. That is typical size they sell, they keep in stock, but I have heard of people getting a smaller size, and I don't want that to happen to you guys. So I'm just going to go ahead and add all of this in. What I'm looking for is just basically equal parts dirt to Turpis. Equal parts, you'll hear it called organic materials, the brown stuff, to the non-organic materials, and that's your drainage materials that are, made out of rocks, basically. This is looking good. I'm gonna come in for a closer look. All right, see that? It's getting there. Now we're gonna go in and we're gonna add our expanded shale, which is basically the same price for about the same weight. And it's a good porous material, which means it's going to absorb and hold water, which means it keeps it away from the roots. And it also adds drainage by providing more airflow through the dirt itself, right? Imagine you're, pour some water directly on this at this point. How long is it going to take to drain through? But if it has a lot of the larger rocks, it's going to drain through faster. And right now I'm doing about, let's say, equal parts. Topsoil, Turpis, and expanded shale. Tilt the bin around, kind of get underneath. So this is going to be my base dirt. Now, somebody asked if you could only choose one mix to start with, or if you could only have one mix, what would you use? And I would say this, but with some added pumice as well. So let's get some of that. So this is the pumice. I have to order it online. I do think I found a shop that has it occasionally, but the last couple of times I've checked, they have been out. I have a few sources linked on my website, and I'll add them below. You can order them through Amazon and get free shipping. One company I really like, especially if you want to order directly from them, it's General Pumice Products. They're out of California. And it's pretty stuff, but it is also a pretty penny, because for $30 you get 15 pounds versus 40 pounds of the shale or Turpis for $14, right? But again, it's worth it. It's beautiful, and I like putting it, I like using it as a top dressing. Let me explain something really quick. We start with our base soil, something like this, fast draining, and then we can always add more materials to it, whether we want to make it more organic and add more topsoil, or if we need to make it faster draining, we add more drainage materials, right? Okay. And since pumice is a little, pricier, a little more precious, I'm going to start with just adding maybe a quarter parts of the pumice to this. And you don't have to use it, but you do need to account for how much organic material is in your pots. Talk about perlite real quick. That's that stuff that's almost like, styrofoam. It's basically a puffed version of this, and it crumbles, and it's just so messy. I haven't used it in a really long time, and I've been fine without it. My plants have been fine without it. Now, this is looking really pretty. I think it's pretty for dirt. And if you get any little chunks of bark or anything in there like that, you can just toss them out, leave them in. Kind of doesn't matter. How does that look? So we see brown organic dirt, we see a lot of the Turpis, we can see the shale in there, and then there's a little bit of pumice too. And that is going to be our basic mix that we start with. Alright, so now let's talk about why we might modify our dirt for different plants. This depends on your climate. It depends on what kind of rain protection you have, whether you're growing inside or out. And the basic thing we're trying to get at here is to make sure our soil is draining fast enough for the particular plant that's in there, or else it'll get root rot, or it'll split, it'll take up too much water. Right away you can tell that the majority of the pots I use are unglazed terracotta. Why? Because it's porous, it helps the dirt evaporate more quickly, and that's our main goal in when we're trying to pot up our succulents, is that we want that dirt to be drying out as fast as possible, and the unglazed clay will help wick some of the moisture out. Of course, every now and then you're going to come across a really cute ceramic planter that's glazed, and you're just going to need it. You're going to need to bring it home. You're going to need to put a plant in it. And in that instance, you want to make sure that the soil that you're adding is
less organic, faster draining, so more inorganic materials in there, and preferably shallow, like this guy. This is like a bonsai pot. Ideally, a lot of times when the pots are making these and they know what they're doing, they leave the inside unglazed and they'll leave the bottom unglazed as well, which does help with the evaporation of the water in the soil. That blue pot with the Sansevieria cylindrica, that is glazed ceramic. The reason why I chose the Sansevieria cylindrica to put in there is, it's a more tropical, subtropical native of South Africa. It's used to more moisture, and it can tolerate that pot. It's not ideal, but it was pretty, and I, had it, and I needed a place to put these guys, so I just made sure that probably about 40% organic material to 60% drainage materials in that pot. And remember, the depth of your pots is going to affect how fast the soil dries. So if you're using a larger pot, you're going to want to add more drainage materials.
Let's move on to the questions portion of the video. You guys asked some really good stuff, and it's going to be really helpful for anyone watching. We all are going to have the same questions. I've had them at one time or another, and I think it's going to be super helpful. Prissy Locks from Instagram asked, what's the best soil for outdoor succulents in the Houston heat? And you just saw it made. We're outside in the Houston heat. My plants are outside in the Houston heat. They do get some rain if the wind blows the rain in, and some of them are even out, just directly under the sky. So I have, just keep an eye on them. If they do start to get too much water, you can bring them in. If there is just an emergency situation and you're really worried about the plant, you can unpot it and just wait for that dirt to dry out, leave the plant in an empty pot somewhere, and go about your business. Everybody, that happens sometimes, so don't freak out. Jackie Moon asked, do you layer, meaning I guess do you layer the different materials? No, you want them all mixed up really well, so when the water goes in, there's even distribution of the drainage materials to help the water flow through the soil and down and out. She also asked, how do you test your soil for dryness? And I just use my finger. I've used the water meter, the little moisture meter things before. They're fun, but you kind of run a risk of not getting a precise reading around the roots, stabbing the roots, and then even passing pathogens in the soil onto another plant if you don't clean it every time in between. So finger test, chopstick, that kind of thing. Just a little just hands-on, get hands-on with it. Don't mind your hands getting dirty. That's what nail brushes and soap are for, right? Jade Star from YouTube asked, do you use the same soil for planting seeds? No, not really. Well, it's the same soil, but it's modified where it's screened out more. There is more organic material than drainage materials because they do need to stay moist, unlike a mature plant. Darian from YouTube asked, can I mix aquarium gravel with my cactus soil and perlite mix? No, I mean, you can, but the problem with aquarium gravel, pebbles, and other drainage materials that are not porous is they actually retain moisture in the soil instead of soaking it up into their own little, individual pieces. So you definitely want to stick with stuff that, and I think a lot of aquarium gravel is even like painted. So those glass beads, all that stuff that does not do anything to help your soil, it doesn't help with drainage. Best left out of the mix and just water less if you don't have anything other than perlite. But it's really, part of the fun and part of the learning experience is, finding these drainage materials if you're going to keep succulents in a place where, it's not very succulent friendly. Like Houston. Romani asked, I am told the best thing for my succulent roots to absorb the perfect amount of water is putting charcoal or larger pebbles in the bottom of the pot. Do you recommend this? There's just so many back and forth positions on should I put gravel in the bottom of my pots with or without drainage holes. Of course, all pots need drainage holes in terrariums, all those things. I just don't even fool with them. It's the only thing that, in my opinion, doesn't need a drainage hole is an aquatic plant. So there's really no purpose in putting that gravel down in the bottom. What that does is create a shorter pot. So if you maybe wanted to put a smaller plant in a bigger pot, and you want to reduce the size of the inside of the pot, you can put some gravel in there and put the dirt on top of that. But what you have to worry about then is the bottom of the dirt where it remains most saturated because of gravity, is raised up higher in the pot, and therefore it's closer to the roots. I hope that makes sense. So also, the more dirt you have in there between the top and the bottom where the drainage hole is, the more I guess you would call it like a capillary action. There's just more dirt in there to spread it down and out of the bottom of the pot, and then to pull the moisture down away from the roots. Because remember, too much moisture for too long around succulent roots will cause rot, and that's no fun. Who else? Chris from YouTube asked, what is your opinion on pre-made mixes? Do I use them or prefer to mix my own? I definitely prefer mixing my own. I never need like just this much dirt. I always need, that probably feels like 6 to 10 small to medium sized pots, that typical size bag that you can get for like $6 of the cactus and succulent mix from Home Depot or wherever. But you still have to add more drainage materials to it. A lot of that stuff does still have fertilizer in it, even though it really shouldn't. So I do recommend and prefer just making your own mix. And if you're worried about, I have a 50-pound bag of topsoil and a 40-pound bag of Turpis and a 40-pound bag of Shale, and nowhere to put it, or I live upstairs, it's pretty easy to find some friends around to share it with. I would just highly consider trying to make as much as you can at once, putting it somewhere out of the way, where it'll be kept dry, and they'll just always have that. Okay, not always, but you know what I mean. Gail from YouTube asks, when we buy cactus or succulent in store, do we have to repot it right away? With many plants, they say don't repot right away, but succulents and cacti are almost always and mostly dirt. We're talking about when you're bringing them home from the nursery. This is true. They typically do not use special soil. It's pretty much the same dirt for all the plants that particular nurseries distribute. So I recommend bring your plant home, let it get accustomed to where you're going to be keeping it for a few days at least, and then go ahead and repot it in your good succulent dirt that you have on standby. And even at that point, you can leave some of the dirt around the roots of these plants. You don't have to like clean all the organic stuff off, but pot it up in dry dirt, wait for it to dry, and then you can start watering it again. That again reduces chance of broken roots, getting water inside of them, and bacteria and all that fun stuff. See, those were some good questions, and I hope my answers help clarify some of the things for you. I guess that's it for this video. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. Always check out the video description, click show more, and there's a ton of information on where to find me, how to reach out, all kinds of stuff. Oh yeah, and how to get your copy of the Succulent Manual. It's a guide to care and repair for all climates, and it's an ebook. I also have a version online at sucsforyou.com. So it's an online web version. Both of them are interactive. You'll see what I mean once you go and check it out. Thanks for watching.